Hello. I don't know if anyone else. Oh, hi, Jessica. Ah, wow. How many people do we have on today? I know we're just a couple minutes late. There was some tech stuff. Hi, Luke. Hi, everyone. Okay. Is this a quick tech question? Is this one-sided? I'm the only one who'll be able to do camera and audio, right? Jessica can tell me. Is that true, Jessica? Let me know. Hi, Tim. Yep. Okay, cool. All right. Well, that works. So I'm gonna see if I can get this screen share to work. I had to switch browsers, so I'm not particularly good at using the browser I'm using right now. Um, let's see if I can make screen share work. I want to change the, yeah, so how am I gonna do? Yeah, I just want to share screen with you. And are y'all able to see my screen? Well, were you able to see my screen a moment ago? Because I'm only able to see the screen I'm showing. Oh, wait. Oh, it's showing the whole screen. I can't change that setting. Just one moment. Looks good. All right, we'll just go with the whole screen. That's fine. Okay, you know what I'll do? I'll make this full screen and just go along with you. I'm going to have a really hard time knowing what's going on in the chat, though. So I'm sorry about that. So I'm just gonna jump in kind of the presentation I do when I'm going through for relational organizing with y'all. And every now and then I'll pop back and we'll have this kind of meta moment where we can see all the screens at once because of the way the screen share is right now. But what I want to do is just kind of take a moment and while I'm popping back and forth, feel free to drop questions in the chat. I'll be a little delayed seeing them because I'm gonna have to jump back and forth between browsers. But I am going to look back at this particular screen every now and then, so I will be able to see questions if questions come up. So that's what we'll do here today, I guess. Today, what I wanted to do is kind of just do a quick talk about relational organizing and what relational organizing is and how it can help with your campaigns and with the efforts that you're organizing around. In order to do that, I should probably tell you who I am, right? So I'm Neil. I am a trainer with a team called the Empower Project. We're an organization designed to support other organizations doing relational organizing. And really the way that we do that is through we've got a three-pronged approach to doing that. We try to provide support for people who plan on doing relational organizing to accomplish their campaign goals by providing resources. As you can see from the money sign on screen, everyone's favorite resource seems to be cash. And we are able to do some granting every now and then. But the two things that we're really excited to provide are software. We create a relational organizing software that really helps you execute relational organizing, as well as any kind of organizing program that you might think of, as well as training. We really like to focus on training because we think that no matter how good your tools are, no matter how well funded you are, you're not going to be able to do good organizing without good organizing skills, just the basic organizing chops. So that's our three-pronged approach. And then I've already said this word a ton of times since getting into this room with all of you, but it's relational organizing. And I bet that some people, maybe not all the people here, I don't know how many people are here right now. Is there a place I can see that? How many humans am I talking to today? Cool. Well, however many of you there are, some of you might have heard relational organizing, some of you might not have. So I'm just gonna try to stick a definition to it right now. I think that relational organizing is organizing that acknowledges and seeks to utilize the power that is within the existing relationships of the people within your constituency. So the power that's already there in those existing relationships of the people in your constituency. So that means that at the end of the day, it's going to be all about preparing and supporting those people to bring that power to affect change. So before we go much farther on that, I want to be very clear on a position to you. I'm going to posit something, and this is the thing I'm going to posit, that the relational organizing can be instrumental in bringing about positive change. This is the idea that I want to try to kind of get across to you that relational organizing can be instrumental in bringing about positive change. And I want to tell you why I think that. I think that because on screen is like a relatively popular theory of change, which a lot of people, where I happen to work, subscribe to at Empower. We subscribe to this theory of change as well. That change kind of climbs a ladder. It kind of pulls up. It goes from individual. An individual realizes that something needs to be done, that change needs to happen, that something needs to happen, to interpersonal. A group of people realizes that change needs to happen, that something needs to be done, to institutional, where those people together are able to leverage, their collective power to take some kind of impact on an institution, or maybe even they start their own new institution that accomplishes the things that need to be done, all the way up to societal, where you start to see like true change happening at a broad base level. Does that check out for folks so far? People okay with that understanding of change? All right, I'm gonna take that and keep it pushing. So here's the idea. All positive change starts with one person turning to another and saying something needs to be done. That all organizing starts with a conversation. So, and then it scales up. Like if we want to do good organizing, we have to find a way to create these conversations, not just as individuals ourselves, as organizers ourselves for our campaign, but to find ways for everyday people that we're organizing with to bring those conversations, those pieces of, talking about what needs to be done, of sharing what actions need to be taken with other people. So that's kind of the thrust of the idea, if you will. It's that these things scale up. And the reason why this is so effective, the reason why one person turning to another person that they already have a connection to is such an effective way to make positive change, such an effective way to move people in the direction that your campaign is trying to move people, is because we know that the perceived trustworthiness of a messenger is more important than the actual message. People care more about who's saying something than what's being said to them. And we've seen this kind of quirk of human psychology used to devastating effect in the last, 1 to 5, however many years, if you want to look at the way the world has been going. But people, honestly, yeah, I see some people are living that. If you look at it, and there's so much studies about this. This guy Steve Martin wrote a book with Joseph Marks. No, it's not that Steve Martin, but he's still very entertaining. He has a very quaint British accent. I'm a fan. He's a really wonderful nerd. But he started studying the way that this messenger matters phenomena works, even in response to like matters of life and death, as in people who have been exposed to COVID and getting vaccinated for this disease. And so this is like they've really done a mountain of research into that. People care more about who's telling them something than what they're being told. So it doesn't matter how reasonable your message is. It doesn't matter how put together your campaign is. For some people, you're just not going to be the right messenger. So you have to find the right messenger and let them take over. And that's where the change happens. When that messenger goes into their interpersonal circle, that second place on this chart, and they start to push in that interpersonal circle. So earlier I said that relational organizing can be instrumental in making positive change. And here's the place where I really want to drive that home. I honestly believe, and I have a mountain of research that says that none of it I did, that other human beings have done, that to make progress in our communities, the most impactful thing we can do is create meaningful conversations between people who are already connected. This is far and away, as far as we can tell, the absolute most effective thing that we can do. On the other hand, we do have other options. There are all kinds of ways to organize. So on the other hand, I want to point out some drawbacks with traditional tactics. And I will editorialize a bit here that they just won't cut it. Individual tactics just won't necessarily get the job done. And sometimes when they get the job done, they'll get the job done wrong, or they'll get the job done at too high a cost. And there's big conversations to be had about that. But if we want to make positive change in ways that are effective, in ways that are lasting, we're going to talk a little bit about how important it is to make these things lasting. Sometimes these traditional tactics just aren't going to get it done. So on screen, it talks about how recent studies have shown that a significant portion of the population is either left out or unreachable using the voter file and consumer list that we have right now. That's 23% of the overall population. I want to be really clear that that 23% is like 23% of the overall population who can vote. And it does not take into account the population of people who cannot vote but are still very, very important. So it's actually somewhat higher than 23%. But you can go a step further, and you can point out that within that 23% is 2 out of 5 of all Black and Latino people of voting age population unreachable through traditional voter contact methods. This is a study that was done and published in a book called Politically Invisible in America in 2018. So at the end of the day, we can be uncomfortably confident that running a phone bank off of a van list might not be our best bet. And we can be comfortably confident that getting people to have conversations with people that they actually know about the things that actually matter might be our best bet. So if that makes sense, we can be uncomfortably confident that this is not working. This thing that we do a lot of is not working. And we can be very comfortably confident that this thing that we do precious little of works very well. So what's the deal with that? Actually, I'm going the wrong way. How can I go back one? Oops, sorry. Wonder if I can, dang it. Let me, oh well. Oh wait, I can do it. Okay, so, sorry about that. New browser problems. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. What is happening? Just one moment. Cool. My presenter view, okay. Okay, so here's the deal. We know that this relational organizing stuff can work. Oh, sorry. Jessica Cruz, does content of relational organizing conversation matter? Or is it important that is part of a relational conversation? Yes, it's going to matter a lot. I'm going to come to this in just a sec. Okay, so I think that, in fact, I'm going to come to this next. I know that I've said that relational organizing is so important and it's something that we can do to make our campaigns more effective. But what I haven't gotten into and what I want to get into next is what we're going to need resource-wise to be able to do this relational organizing stuff. And I wanted to break it down into 3 pieces. So the first piece I wanted to break it down to is what we need to do relational organizing effectively is that we need to have our organizing fundamentals on lock. And not just because we need to be super organizers, but we need to have them on lock because we need to be able to share them. Okay? And this kind of gets into what Jessica's question is in the chat is, it's that, does the content of the conversation matter? The content of the conversation matters a lot. Relational organizing is all about preparing and supporting people to bring the power within their existing relationships to affect change. So that means that we're going to have to really effectively train a large number of volunteers to have meaningful conversations about the issues that matter, about the campaigns that we're working on. We can't just rely on ourselves and our really good comms departments and our digital departments. We can't just rely on really, really convincing ads, because none of the ads are actually that convincing, because as we just talked about, the messenger matters. So what we need to do is we need to find a way to transmit these really, really meaningful, really, really effective kinds of like conversation starters and conversation points and ways of communicating to our volunteers. That's how it's going to work, by imparting really good organizing skills to a large number of individuals. You'll be able to you'll be able to start making those big conversations. You'll be able to start seeing these things scale up. So that's why, in order to do good relational organizing, your organizing fundamentals at large need to be on lock as a team. You need to have organizers who are prepared to train volunteers to do one-on-ones, to do storytelling, to make asks, etc. You need to be ready to do all that, because these conversations don't just happen when you say, hey, talk to your friends. These conversations happen when an organizer sits down with a volunteer and says, hey, I need you to have a conversation with your friends in this way about these things, because these things are important to you and you are important to them. Does that kind of get at the question that you asked a little bit ago, Jessica? I hope so. All right, I'm gonna keep pushing. I'm gonna come back and look at the chat in just a sec, but I'm gonna keep pushing from there. So we really need to have our organizing fundamentals on lock if we're going to be doing these, if we're going to be executing relational organizing programs effectively. The next piece that, another thing about that is that, earlier I talked about how Empower, we try to support people doing relational organizing by providing resources and training, and the big part of this in technology, and the big part of this one is that we do provide a training on relational organizing that is free of charge to like all participants and organizers who want to come in and take that training. And it's I think 4-week course, twice a week, and over the course of it, it really nails down how to start transmitting some of the skills that you need to transmit to volunteers. That is going to resume in February, and I think that my information is with the organizers of this conference, and we can get that out to all the participants who want to sign up for our Relational Organizing Academy. It's an extended training, and I think it has extended benefits. So it's probably my favorite piece of the program that we have at the Empower Project. I'm going to take just a minute and pause and see if anyone has any questions so far, anything we covered so far. Going once, going twice. Gonna wait just a moment longer. All right, I'm gonna keep it pushing to the next piece. So we talked about step one. If you want to pull off a relational organizing, and you want to execute this methodology as part of your campaign, you're really going to need to dial in your organizing fundamentals, mostly so that you can transfer those skills to your cadre of volunteers. What else are you going to need? Step two, you're going to need a system to keep all of this organizing organized. So if you try to run a relational organizing campaign and all you have is like a bunch of spreadsheets, you're going to slowly like fall into insanity. It's going to take you down. I've seen it happen so many times. Would someone outside the USA learn from your academy? Oh yeah, I see your question, David. So yeah, a lot. So in the last academy, I think there were 2 people from Southeastern Europe and 1 person from Mexico. But the current academy is only in English. We don't have a Spanish-speaking academy yet, or really any other language. We've considered putting together other language academies. We just haven't had the necessary draw to make other language academies. And we did experiment with a bilingual academy once, and I don't recommend how we tried to execute that. So if you want to figure out how to get involved in the Relational Organizing Academy that we do at Empower, then you could reach out and we could set that up. Hopefully that helps. Thanks, David. Okay. All right, I'm gonna keep it pushing. Okay, so the second thing you need, if the first thing you need is to have your organizing fundamentals on lock, then the second thing that you're going to need is you're going to need a system to keep all of this organizing organized. Relational organizing is honest, complex stuff at the end of the day. It's not complicated, it's just complex. You're going to have to keep track of a lot of relationships. And that means that you're going to have a lot of follow-up to do, a lot of volunteers to check in with. You're going to have to keep your list of volunteers while volunteers have their own lists of contacts. This can turn into a bit of a headache if you don't have something that's kind of purpose-built to manage all of that. So it's really important to have some kind of volunteer management system, something that keeps track of what volunteers have done so far, what they're doing now, what you want them to do next. We call this the elevator of engagement, and we talk about it at length in our academy because it's a big part of relational organizing and how you slowly elevate people to do more, or you realize what their level of comfort is, and you keep them, and they decide to stay right there, and that's okay because the elevator goes both up and down. Accessibility is important. So also log of like how the follow-up is going and when you're going to catch up with this person next. And most importantly, I think notes is a super important part of relational organizing. So how did I end up, I keep doing that, guys. Man, I'm really struggling with this browser. Sorry, gang. Let me actually reduce. And I want to go back. Y'all are getting spoilers. I can do that, but it's not showing up in full size. Interesting. Okay, let me make it big again. See if I was just missing it in full size. I definitely was. Look at that. All right. So those are some of the things that you're going to want in a volunteer management system. You can use all kinds of things to do your volunteer management. I've heard of people using CRMs. Sounds chaotic to me. I've heard of people using van products. I've heard of people using like every action, so on, what have you. I've heard of people using kind of like purpose-built things that they've made themselves or even had engineered. If you don't want to go through the headache of purpose building something or the cost of like having something engineered, and the idea of putting all of your volunteers into a CRM feels kind of weird to you, then the other thing I'll tell you is that we at the Empower Project actually do produce a relational organizing kind of like management tool, a system that can help you keep your relational organizing managed. We call this Empower, and it's something that we engineered in-house, that we provide direct support for, that we're always adding to. For instance, right now, we're building canvassing and peer-to-peer texting features into it, which is really exciting. And honestly, it is, as in my somewhat biased opinion, I do work here, but it's the best. It's the best organizing tool that I ever used, and I did actually use it before I came on as a team member at Empower. So I'm a big fan of this stuff. So that's one thing that I wanted to just let y'all know about. And if you want to learn more about Empower or using a system like it to execute a relational organizing program, again, we can get contact information out through the conference organizers. Thanks, Jessica. Sorry for not even being able to check whether you heard my shout out. All right. And the third piece that you're going to need in order to execute a good relational organizing program, and I think this one is actually most important. If you've got the skills foundation, if you got your fundamentals all locked down, and then on top of that, you've got a system in place that you're going to use to knock this thing out, you need dedication to both the method and the system. A lot of times when humans like me stand up at conferences like this and talk about, things that could make everything better, we really come at you acting like it's going to be easy. Like it's going to be easy and this is going to be a snap and you just plug it in and then it's going to make things better. That's really not the case with relational organizing. It's not necessarily easy. What it is necessarily is effective. What it is necessarily is worthwhile. What it is necessarily is sustainable and long-standing. But what it's not necessarily is easy. So you're gonna have to dedicate someone to the program so they can build those relationships with those volunteers. You're gonna have to dedicate someone to your system so that they can know how it works and know where to put in information and know what progress looks like. And those are the big three things that you're going to need to execute a good relational organizing program. The first is a solid fundamentals game, right, that you can transmit to your volunteers. The second is a system that you can use to keep your organizing organized. And the third is dedication to the method that you're working with as an organizer. So I was just going to kind of set this down. How do I unscreen share? I'm going to stop screen sharing, yes. And then I'm going to take a step back, and because that's really a lot of what I had prepared for today. and see if there are any questions about any of what we've covered so far. Because I don't want to be a talking head at you much longer. And I need to turn some lights on too. One moment. A little better. So, any questions in the chat about relational organizing, similar methodologies, or anything like that? Do you have examples of where this has worked the best? Yes. One moment. So I'll start talking to you about it. And so there's actually a book, while I pull up another. I should really get fluent in Safari for days like today. But I'm going to talk to you for just a moment about an example of where this works best. So two states that I really keep a close eye on when it comes to relational organizing are Minnesota and Wisconsin. There's an organization in Minnesota called Isaiah, and they were actually really closely studied in their relational organizing program, talking about how a program involving about 7 people turned into a program involving about 17,000 people over the course of, I think, 18 months, if I remember correctly. So that's a really, really interesting example that is really well documented in a book called Prisms of the People, prisms like that you shine light through, of the people, which is a really informative book about the effectiveness of relational organizing. If you want to look at other examples of really effective relational organizing campaigns, I think that, especially a little farther south, if you look at Georgia in 2021, John Ossoff ran a really, really impressive relational organizing campaign where he had stipended volunteers doing really effective, sophisticated message sharing with people in their networks, and that they have those genuine and pre-existing connections to. So those are just 2 examples off the top of my head. That are some of my favorite examples. There's some interesting ones from Ohio and Wisconsin as well. But yeah, let me see if I can grab you while I wait for any other questions to populate. I really have I'm struggling with the format. I really have a call and response style of doing these sorts of things. But while I wait for any other questions to populate, I'll see if I can grab some of the stats about what happened with some of these other campaigns. Just give me one moment. I'm pulling up the Isaiah campaign right now, and we can actually grab some of the pieces out of. Sorry, just jumping around between browsers. Some statistics. In your way, you're going to see a case study real quick. Sorry about the load time. If there are any other questions while this is loading up, I can try to get at those. Here we go. Really fighting with loading times right now. All right. make this full size. And go to, come over here. Ooh. And I can share screen. Where am I based out of? I'm based out of Michigan. And people from Empower are kind of like all over the, yeah, I want to allow to share screen. Yes. And people at Empower, I think we've got, what, 3 people in Texas, a couple of people because we have software engineers, quite a few people in Wisconsin. There's 1 other person in Michigan. So we're kind of spread out all over the states. We went digital a little bit before COVID, just because we wanted to, like, it was just because we could. We didn't actually see it coming. But here is an example on screen coming up of a campaign that worked really well. Presenter view, yeah, that's what I need to do, presenter view. Excellent. Okay, so here's a case study from an organization called Isaiah in Minnesota. The reason I use a Minnesota organization is because at Empower, I really focus on the state of Minnesota, so I'm going to use them as an example. Minnesota tried to use the campaign about basically trash removal. One of the ways that like systemic racism shows up in communities sometimes is a lack of access to just public services. And so there were some neighborhoods in Minneapolis that didn't have access to actual trash removal. And so they ran a campaign about how can we get people to realize that there's a correlation between the people who are in power and the fact that we have a hard time and we're getting overcharged for trash removal. So this is what they did in 2019. One organizer, Vivian, had 7 people. There were actually 8 to begin with, but 1 dropped out. Had 7 people that they wanted to start a campaign about talking to their neighbors about the people who are currently in power, about the way our current political system works is a lot of the reason for why it costs so much for us to just get trash out of our neighborhood. And so those 7 people, a month later, looked that it grew into this. This is actually a case study that was published in that book, Prisms of the People. You can see it down here on screen. And so you had the Isaiah organizer, Viv, who organized these 7 volunteers. And then they worked with a bunch of contacts that they recruited those contacts into being volunteers. Here's November of 2019. I think this is right before we broke. I can't remember what this number is demonstrating. I think it's when we started breaking into the thousands. And here is how voter turnout looked like after they started their relational organizing campaign based on, after they started their relational organizing campaign that was initially rooted in a neighborhood's to trash removal. So that's kind of what that looked like. It had one of the highest in its city council race. Boom. I don't know. Is that kind of... Oh, I forgot that one's actually a GIF. I keep thinking I'm switching between, but this is actually a dynamic image. But yeah, so here there's an example of relational organizing kind of like working out really well. And so here's what one of those initial 7 people had to say about the campaign that they ran. They said, in the context of Minnesota right now, other organizations will say that they have like dozens of thousands of members. We don't have a base like that, but they can't deliver that base, not even close. I mean, not even close. It says right on screen. I think that what this really gets at is that with relational organizing, it allows you to actually deliver on results. Oh, really? Am I not screen sharing? Did my screen share not work? Are you seeing this graph? Oh, just started. Okay, cool. Sorry. But yeah, I don't know if that kind of story about what happened in Minneapolis kind of gets at an example of one of these programs working really effectively. It's one of my favorite stories. How you can get people briefly, okay. I'll leave it up longer. I can't see what you say on that screen. But one more time, I'll walk through it. And from the start, you had Viv, the organizer, really cool person, and the 7 people that she started with in this particular campaign. And then you have how it scaled up after 1 month from August to September of 2019, and how it scaled up after 2 months from into November of 2019, and how many contacts that they were making with that program. And I think that this is when this is pretty much how they went from, I think, 7 to 17,000. And this is kind of a set of graphs that tell that story of that election in Minneapolis 2 years ago, in the amount of impact that they had in their precinct and on a ballot measure. All right. And here's a quote from one of Vivian's leaders. Okay. I'm going to go back and see what's going on in the comments. Okay. Any other questions about relational organizing? It's in like how you can build a relational organizing program in your particular campaign, as part of your campaign. Going once. Going twice. All right. That's a lot of what I had queued up for today. I'm going to leave it open for questions. Oh, thanks, Christy. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think that what happened with the Isaiah example, is this something that you would recommend for both issue and campaigns? Definitely, Luke. I think that, okay, so I think that, yeah, definitely it's something I would recommend for both issue and candidate campaigns. Especially candidate campaigns where you're getting out early. But yes, I would recommend it for both issue and candidate campaigns, definitely. And at Empower, we provide support for both issue and candidate campaigns, both from a training perspective and from a access to software perspective. Super yes to that. Yeah, thanks, John. Good to have been able to take this space with you. Appreciate you. So that's what I've got going on. I don't really know if there's a moderator who comes and takes over from me and lets y'all know what the next place is. Jess, help. Luke, and what about costs? Okay, yeah, let's talk about costs. Yeah. The reason I don't usually bring up costs in these kinds of settings is because first, it's kind of ridiculously cheap. A lot of times Empower, and especially from a software perspective, especially from a training perspective, it's ridiculously cheap. We very rarely charge for training at all. We work really hard to put together a development model that makes it possible for us to provide help to organizations at little to no cost. When it comes to softwares, if you have a candidate campaign, then there's like a sliding scale of costs based on the size of the kind of constituency that you're electing with. For instance, the cost would be different for a precinct-based city council campaign than for a statewide election. But if you have a candidate campaign and you want to know about the cost of Empower, they're small. I'm talking about $10 a month is the average. If I had to say for single candidate campaigns, sometimes they're higher if you're in a very large, constituency. Other than that, if you are a 501c3 or C4, Empower is free. So keep that in mind. Also, Luke, thank you so much for getting in this chat with these questions. I really appreciate that. Let me turn my screen share off. Why am I screen share? But Luke, yeah, thank you so much for mentioned Ossoff earlier. I did. How much do you think he put into it? I think Ossoff was late to doing the relational organizing thing, but then again, that's not his fault. You know what I mean? Or that campaign's fault. I shouldn't say like it's Ossoff by name. It's not like Ossoff made those calls. You know what I mean? But I think they were a little late to get to it, but that's what's going to happen with the special. And I think that, I mean, I wasn't in Georgia. I had groups in Georgia that I was keeping an eye on, but I don't know. It seems to me like they put their back into it. And a lot of that back was the wallet, because I know they ran a stipend campaign, which is, yes, I do know that Ossoff had dedicated staff on their relational campaign. That is a thing I know that happened. They also had a stipended volunteer program, and I think stipended volunteer programs work really well. Yes, Ossoff did do the stipended volunteer program. Anything else? I mean, I've looked at the numbers on the program. It was an impressive program. I think it would have been even more impressive. You can't say that because it's a special. Yeah, thanks, Luke. In Massachusetts, Ed Markey's campaign, now legendary for their yeah. Okay, so I don't have a lot of East Coast groups, but I've heard the name Ed Markey from my colleagues who have dealt with East Coast stuff. But yes, yes, I can say that. The legends of the Ed Markey campaign. Go ahead. Also, I mean, if you want to talk about relational organizing campaigns that went hard, I mean, you could talk about Buttigieg in Iowa. Mayor Pete went off with his relational organizing campaign in Iowa. However you feel about what happened in that election, what no one can deny is that the Pete Iowa relational organizing campaign was gangbusters. They were not playing around with that caucus. They were in there, and it was effective. I mean, hey, but yeah, so there's that. What's special about? Okay, I don't have the answers to that question because I'm not East Coast. But let me see if I have anything to help with that. Give me a moment. If I can find my colleagues' notes in a conversation on this, because I don't know enough to be able to comment. Not the Massachusetts guy. We split up at Empower. We split up our. We split up based on states. I don't have anything popping right up in my Slack, so I'm not gonna try to make a thing up. Efficacy is the thing that people talk a lot about with it. And I'm not seeing anything on our blog about Ed Markey specifically, even though some of my colleagues are bringing it up. I'm gonna bow out and do a get back to you with it. Let me see if I can. While I'm waiting for other questions, let's see if I can look it up. I'll go a little further on the blog. What key traits do I think is critical for effective relational organizing? Yeah. Yeah. No problem. Thanks, Deb. If something pops up, I'm literally looking through the Slack while I'm talking to y'all. If something pops up, I'm looking through the blog too, because sometimes we do blogs on that. So if something pops up, I'll definitely bring it back up. Okay, I see Christy's question. What key traits do I think is critical for effective relational organizing? Okay, so I'm going to go back to the 3 keys that I think I came in with on this one, and it's going to be the first, that your general organizing skills are on lock, and I bet that's really what you're asking for there. But I'll say the other 2 just because I think they're important. Putting together a system that you can implement, that you can actually make work, and also dedication. So I bet that question is really focusing in on what some of those organizing skills that you want to have on lock are. And I think the relational organizing skills that the organizing skills that are most important when trying to implement a relational organizing methodology are going to be strong asks. And I have a whole thing. A lot of people say hard asks. I don't say hard asks. I try not to make asks of people that are hard. I try to make asks of people that are strong. So I say strong asks. Um, and not just, oh, skip what I just said. The first thing is training volunteers. The most important piece of putting together a relational organizing, of implementing relational organizing methodologies in a campaign is being prepared and being committed to training volunteers. So you're going to want to build a really strong volunteer training program. You're going to want to have an organizer with a real knack for putting together trainings, for implementing things like simple sample practice. You're really going to want to lean in on on building an organizing program that focuses on training volunteers, and not just training volunteers to tap spacebar and text back, but training volunteers to talk to people that they actually care about the things that actually matter, which is actually making a really big ask of volunteers, if you ask me. So I think that's the most important thing, really focusing on putting together an organizing team that's ready to train volunteers. And what would we be training those volunteers around? Things like storytelling, uh, things like making asks, things like assessing motives and like, you know, what motivates the people in their life, and these kinds of things. So I think that those are the big three. One-on-one, I think the big three when it comes to relational organizing are one-on-ones, storytelling, and asks. Key traits. Big umbrella thing, training. Three small things, one-on-ones, storytelling, asks. Thanks, Christy. Does that help? I hope that answers your question effectively. Cool. Okay. All right. So that's, oh, nice. No problem. Nice. So that's pretty much the segment that I've put together. I know it's getting pretty late in the day. So if people want to stay on and ask more questions, oh, what do we got? Oh, cool. I'm glad, Christy. Hey, we're gonna relaunch our Relational Organizing Academy at the Empower Project in February. It ran this year, in the year of 2021. I keep saying 2020 still. In the year of 2021, our Relational Organizing Academy ran from February, question mark, maybe March, February or March, until it actually ended last week, I think. So we turned it off. We're turning it off for the rest of December, and we're not going to do one in January, and we'll pick back up in February. And we can send out that information to the conference organizers so they can let people know about our Relational Organizing Academy. If you want to take a deep dive into the traits that are critical for effective relational organizing, I'm quoting you, Christy. It was that good of a question. I'm quoting you. If you want to take a deep dive into those things, then you're super invited to our Relational Organizing Academy. It's super free. It's extra free. Cool. For Marky, oh man, Richard came through with the research. I'll read it out loud for anyone who doesn't have access to the chat. So Richard Lee did a little bit of homework on Marky's relational organizing campaign, and he came back with quotes. For Marky, the backbone of his relational organizing program is young people, which is interesting because his opponent was Joe Kennedy, who was supposed to garner the youth vote. Okay. And then another question for me. What's your favorite, most exciting part of the job? For me, as a person who supports people in doing relational organizing, and what I get to do, I think my favorite part of my gig is that I get to work with organizations kind of all over the states. I am focused on like 3 or 4 states in particular, but I get to work with organizations from like all over the U.S. And kind of see the nuts and bolts of their campaigns and try to figure out how to make things work that much better. Before I was in the support role that I'm in now, what was my favorite part of relational organizing as an organizer back when I was in the field and on the ground and doing lead organizer stuff? It was honestly watching volunteers like outgrow me. I know that's weird to say, but it was definitely my favorite part of any situation. When I had done enough trainings with a volunteer, and I'd done enough trainings with a group of volunteers that like all of a sudden they were just like doing things without me, and like they'd be updating me on what was going on. I'd be like, oh yeah, we do need to respond to that. Oh, you and that was my favorite part of it. Really watching them kind of like go up that elevator of engagement and really really start to take ownership of the work that we were doing, because it wasn't work that I was doing um, like on them. It was work that we all got to do together, like with each other, and that was my favorite part of being able to like do relational organizing. And now my favorite part is trying to make that experience happen for other organizers. So yeah. Did I freeze? I might have. Cool. See another question in the chat. Oh no, I'm not frozen. Okay, cool. Because it looks frozen on my end, so I'm glad it's still working. Cool. Uh, so still taking other questions. Any other questions come through, I'll try to answer those. Other than that, that's a lot of what I had queued up for today. So thank you so much for making the time and hanging out and sharing this space together. Um, See you in the real world, maybe. And thanks again to Richard. Come through with the homework. Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Richard. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Night, David. This is